Welcome once again to Digging Deeper with Backyard Farmer. I'm Kim Todd, and together we're going to unearth the biggest topics in Nebraska's gardening world. On today's program, we're going to be talking about best practices for your turf. So, we're going to be talking grass today, and it's not the kind that you smoke, it's the kind you mow. And people really love to keep that turf weed-free. They don't like those pests, those diseases. So two of our regular old panelists have decided to have that conversation about what to do about that turf. So Jonathan and Bill, I think we really probably want to start talking about one of those STEP programs.
Yeah, I think it's something that we have a little frustration with sometimes because people want to just follow the calendar and not look at what's actually happening in their landscape. Yeah. And they just got to do something because they think they have to do something. And a lot of times what they're doing is inappropriate. It really doesn't make a lot of sense. And that could be from fertility to pest control, using the wrong products at the wrong time. And so that can be a little bit frustrating, I think, when we're trying to talk to homeowners about what they should be doing to maintain that lawn.
Timing is a big part of it, I think. The pests and weeds, they don't necessarily know the calendar. So if you're doing it by the day on the calendar, that's not always going to be the most effective use of your time.
I mean, everything from pre-emergence applications for your crabgrass and grub control applications. I mean, that window is so narrow and right. Depending on the product you're using, right? And then Absolutely. End of the year when we're dealing with weed control to clean things up for the next year, there's general time that's important, but we can't just say, well, I need to go out and apply something today, even if it might not be needed.
So is it my imagination, or it used to be 4-step, and now there's like 5 and 6 and 7, and
the more steps, the better, right?
Apparently, on your Fitbit,
the higher the
right?
ladder to heaven.
Yeah. So what is in these steps, and what ones are really important?
So generally, let's talk about the historic step programs, right?
Yeah.
So the first one is usually early spring, has a crabgrass preventer in it and fertilizer, and they all contain fertilizer, right? So you're getting a combination of a pest control and a fertilizer, even if the fertilizer and pest control maybe should or shouldn't be applied at the same time. So the first one is your pre-emergence, and then usually a step 2 might be fertilizer with a post-emergence for like cleaning up dandelions and kind of winter annuals. Step 3 is usually in the summertime, and then that's going to have like some of your grub control products in it.
The good ones, imidacloprid, all those classics.
Exactly. And then the old one is we do this 4th step, or maybe a 5th step. A 4th step would be sometime in the fall, and then you'd see people also doing maybe a 5th application around like Halloween and Thanksgiving. And that was a historic recommendation, and we've kind of dug into that now, and we're realizing that a lot of those applications don't always make sense. And too many times the fertilizer part isn't really needed, but they're applying for the pest side, like they're making the pre-emergence application in the spring. Why are we doing that? Or we're fertilizing to control grubs when we maybe don't need to do that application. And so that can be frustrating for me as a turf fertility person.
Yeah, and the grub control part, I mean, there's such a finicky thing. There has to be the application at the right time. Otherwise, you're just putting product out and you're not going to get the control that you actually want. If you miss that May-June window, then you're really just putting product out and you're not going to see any control.
So can you talk a little bit about the grub control and the grub life cycle to get an idea of like what we're trying to accomplish, right?
I brought some grubs with me here. I pickled these about a year ago.
Are there jalapenos associated?
No, it's just dill.
Just dill.
The grubs, they have a very interesting life cycle, I think. They overwinter as a 3rd instar. So these big grubs are down deep in the soil for the annual white grubs. So Japanese beetle, mass chafers, things like that. There are some that have a 3-year cycle, those Phylophica grubs, the May-June beetles, but generally we're more worried about mass chafers and Japanese beetles. So over the winter, they're this big grub down in the soil. In the spring, they come up and they pupate. So any application that you make in the spring isn't to control the grubs that were there last year. It's to control the grubs that are going to come this year. If you're doing prevention, then you're putting an application down that's going to be absorbed by the turf to protect it from new grubs that are laid into the soil in July or August.
So this is another insect pests kind of a question. What are the other insect pests that people think they're controlling in this step process? And again, is it necessary, as Bill was saying?
I think that all the other ones are living in the grubs world. I mean, grubs are the #1 pest in turf here in the Nebraska area. Other than that, I mean, you can find bill bugs sometimes. You can see some caterpillar problems, but if you're doing something like an aceleprant application or Scott's Grub X, you're going to get a lot of those other pests, the bill bugs and the caterpillars. The only ones that we wouldn't get with that are the chinch bugs, and I haven't really dealt with a whole lot of chinch bugs here in Nebraska, but I also haven't dealt with a lot of buffalo grass lawns where I know they can be a problem. So that would involve some other insecticides at different times of the year.
All right. Well, we want to encourage our Facebook watchers to comment, to watch us for sure on television. Give us all those comments. Tell us whether you like what we're doing, and that would be Facebook, NET, and Backyard Farmer. And we really do need to hear from you because we're not going to do this anymore if you don't like it. Okay, so you brought up buffalo grass and you brought up bill bugs. So what is the perfect lawn species?
Yeah, what's the best?
The
For
best
where?
one,
Yeah.
no, I mean, so buffalo grass, I'm not going to say is perfect for every situation, right? If you want that immaculate lawn, then buffalo grass may not be the one for you. It has kind of that blue-green hue. It's finer texture. It looks more wispy, but it's a native. It's a native to Nebraska. It's the only native turf grass in North America. Even Kentucky bluegrass is not from Kentucky. It's from Germany.
Right.
And into the mountains. And so if you want a native, like that's a good option, and it's obviously adapted to our climate. And so that would be one. If you're looking for more of those traditional cool season grasses, we like the tall fescue in the eastern half of the state because we get enough rain. If you go further west, tall fescue may fail because if you have a longer drought, then you can have issues where that grass can die. So we still see damage from 2012's drought in Lincoln, for example, of athletic fields that are just gone and all weeds now because the grass died during that drought. So that situation of Kentucky bluegrass is a better option. Avoid things like perennial ryegrass, fine fescues. They can't handle our climate, and so they just quickly die off.
So do we see a back and forth between the pests that bother the bluegrass? So let's say somebody wants to go in a more environmentally friendly way, or at least they think so. So they want to convert from bluegrass or fescue to buffalo, and they had grubs or they had all sorts of other pests or diseases. Will that just simply show up now in the buffalo grass?
You'll see some different pests. You're not going to get the classic turf pests with buffalo grass. They have their own, it has its own little complex of pests that we deal with more with that. And I try to tell everybody has grubs. I mean, they're everywhere. You could go dig anywhere at any point during the fall and you're going to find 3 or 4 of them just about anywhere in any turf. The turf can handle a certain amount of them. If you start seeing 8 or 9 or more in a square foot, that's when we start to worry. So you're always going to find bugs in grass. That's good. That means the grass is alive and it's a happy, environmentally happy place. So I think that, yeah, you're going to still see some stuff in buffalo grass. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I think we had bill bugs, did we not, in our courtyard when we had buffalo grass in there? I'm
That makes
pretty
sense.
sure.
Yeah.
And that was when Fred was
Yeah.
still, I mean, he was our bug guy, of
Yeah.
course, wondrous pageantry.
He had a really cool bill bug farm that he took care of, and I know it was involved with a lot of buffalo grass as well. So
He's farming bill bugs.
he was, yeah. He had like in a shed out at the farm.
Yep, it's an entomology building. It was, yeah.
Well,
and
I guess
chinch
that's how
bugs
you
too,
figure out the
so.
research,
I
right?
mean, we're weird people. You know
That's
that,
true.
right?
Yeah, you're bug guys. Yeah, turf is, a little weird, but not quite as bad as you bug guys. All right, so people also, we're getting a lot of questions from people who really do want to touch the earth more lightly. And yet they do want that perfect turf. So what are the environmental concerns or the pollution concerns?
One of the things that I'm trying to recommend to people is separate the control products with the fertilizers, right? I mean, we're making fertilizer applications to control because we want weed control. If we want weed control, use a weed control product. So at the end of the year, for example, our recommendations have changed. We do research, we're always reevaluating, and we know now that fertilizing late into October leads to that fertilizer getting leached out in the winter and going into our rivers. But people are making those applications partly because they're trying to control broadleaf weeds. So if you could just go get a broadleaf herbicide, go do that and don't make the fertilizer application. So if we can get a disconnect between our pest control and our fertilizer, we can have a lot better environmental footprint in turf. The other thing too is get away from these dumb step programs. I wrote an article recently. It just said, if you're in the growing season and your grass is not growing and it's yellow, it probably needs fertilizer. So go fertilize it. And if your grass is growing like crazy, like it's been this spring with all of our rain, and people are out making step 2 and complaining about mowing every 3 days, so it's like, well, why did you fertilize, right? So let your mower kind of dictate in season if you have to fertilize or not. And if it gets to the middle of the summer and it's 100 degrees, maybe think about not fertilizing then or using organic product to minimize that risk of burn. But for the most part, I see way too many under-fertilized lawns in the middle of the summer because people are concerned about burn, and then they just have this wispy, thin yellow lawn that has lots of weed issues like crabgrass. Whereas if you just fertilize it, we might eliminate a lot of those issues and eliminate the spray. So I think that's an important thing to think about, is just use your eyes to figure out when you have to put that fertilizer down.
Take care of the problem you have and not the one you anticipate. Is
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and you brought up mowing and mowing, a lot. So what about the clippings? Because we actually had a question come in from somebody from Omaha who is really concerned about the bagged clippings in the landfills.
Yeah, definitely.
And so do you need to bag?
Clippings are mainly water. So they're about 85% water by weight. But then that dry material has fertilizer in it, right? And if you bind it all together, that nutrient can be lost and go into our groundwater. And so always want to return our clippings. They don't, because they are mainly water, they don't make thatch. So if you're mowing frequently, constantly mulch mowing, you're adding nutrient back in. So a tall fescue lawn that's mulch mowed might need 1 or 2 applications of fertilizer a year. And if the soil's good, maybe 0 if you are on a continual mulch mowing. And so I think that's the one thing homeowners do wrong, probably compared to professionals. They under mow. They stretch out their intervals too long. They scalp it down. It changes how the plant grows. It opens the soil up to weeds and pests. And so if you really want to have a good looking lawn, just not getting behind on your 1/3 rule of mowing is one of the best things that you could do to have a great looking lawn.
Or you can be weird like me and have a 5-inch tall lawn all the time.
Yeah, that too. But just don't
then have
scalp.
mosquitoes in it and chiggers.
I haven't got too many of those, but I definitely haven't dealt with any pests, and
Yeah.
I mow less.
And people ask too, like, what's the ideal mowing height? I mean, you can mow at any height. You can mow at 5 inches, you can mow at 1 inch. But if you're gonna mow at 1 inch, know that your maintenance requirements are gonna go way up, and you're gonna have to be mowing every other day. So you can't be mowing once a week at 1 inch because the grass is gonna grow too fast and you're gonna be scalping it. So, that's why we say that 2 to 3 is a nice range, and 3 to 4 if you wanna be even lower maintenance. The lower you go, the more inputs you need.
Okay, so if you are one of those people who just really does want to bag those clippings, are they bagging up the pests and the diseases too and carrying those either into the compost? Because I do know a lot of people that dump their clippings into the compost pile.
Not too many pests are going to be caught up in that. You might get some moth eggs that are laid at the tips of the blade of grass. That's more of a golf course phenomenon, though, where they take those clippings off of greens and they get rid of a lot of cutworm problems and things like that.
Yep.
In a home lawn, you're not getting rid of the pests by bagging them. Yeah, all of your main pests are below ground. Unless you're digging the grass up and planting new grass all the time, you're not getting rid of them like that.
Okay, good. All right, so what truly are the best management practices? Do you want to go kind of all the way through? What would be the best management practices for a lawn from both of you guys?
I think from a fertility water mowing perspective, if I take that approach, fertilize in the season. Don't do it too early before the grass is actively growing, and don't do it too late. But when you're in season, watch your clipping yield. You should be trying to mow about once a week. If you're mowing more than that, you're over-fertilized. If you're mowing less than that, you're under-fertilized. And then, water, when you start to see drought, it won't cause any problems. And then, mow at the same height and the same frequency. And if you do those things from a cultural perspective, you're honestly going to have not many problems with other types of issues and have a nice looking lawn.
For insecticides, you would be looking at going out around Mother's Day, as you wouldn't want to go too much later than 4th of July with any applications. If you stretch out a preventative treatment to that point, the grass may be too stressed by the time summer comes to really absorb it, and the pest might already be there. So you may not be getting enough insecticide to the site fast enough to work. If you want to do curative, which is just waiting until the damage happens, that's something you're going to do in August or September. and you'll be doing some renovation as well. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's not a failure. It's just you're changing up things a little bit.
Well, and it's not going to be perfect from year to year.
Yeah,
Well, we did this a couple years ago on the show, right, where we regrassed my yard because I went from an old variety to a newer variety of tall fescue.
Right.
It has better disease resistance and better color and finer texture. So, I mean, you don't see farmers using the same varieties of corn, but we have lawns that are 30, 40, 50, 60-year-old varieties. We have better genetics out there.
Right.
We should be using those, and it's 6-7 weeks to kill your lawn and then reseed into it, and then you have a lower input lawn. And so another thing that we can do is just change cultivars and change varieties.
Perfect, and that's what we at the university do best.
Oh, yeah.
All right, thanks guys. Well, that's all the time we have for Digging Deeper with Backyard Farmer. So you can watch a new Digging Deeper on Facebook every Sunday night at 6:30 p.m. Central. Do not miss Backyard Farmer Live every Thursday at 7 p.m. Central on NET. Thanks for digging deeper with Backyard Farmer.